So this might be a more emotional video from my previous ones, because I am here to complain. It's about Mydei and the frustrating reality of his situation in Honkai Star Rail. Now, if you've been following my streams for a while, it's no secret that Mydei is one of my favorite characters for reasons. And today, I'm laying out the grievances I have with this character and why I think Hoyo has done an awful job with this kit from both the gameplay and meta perspective. To briefly summarize Mydei as a playable unit, he is the main DPS whose playstyle revolves around constantly healing and draining his own HP. Losing HP in any ways generates charge stacks based on the amount of HP lost. After accumulating 150 charge, he consumes that amount to unleash an enhanced version of his skill, which is the strongest attack in his kit. Ideally, you want him to constantly heal and take damage in order to produce as many of these enhanced skills as possible. This is where his normal skill comes in, where he will deal blast damage and consume half of his current HP. So before you skill, you ideally want to be as healthy as possible for maximum charge stacks, which can be achieved via healing sources like his ultimate, but primarily from teammates. Now on paper, this already seems like a very interesting kit. After all, there haven't been any previous characters who used this specific mechanic, and credit where credit is due. Hoyoverse did a great job regarding the uniqueness of his charge mechanic. However, it only took one aspect of Mydei's kit to ruin any innovation this character had and turn him into, arguably, the worst designed limited unit in the game. You see, after the first time Mydei's charge reaches 100, usually after his first skill, he goes into the Vendetta state, where his entire gameplay, excluding his ultimate, plays automatically for the rest of the fight. While there are more issues in this kit I will go over later, this auto mechanic is the main culprit that single-handedly ruins his experience. Fitting of a Berserker character, this is in no way a fun mechanic since you can't even control the character outside of pressing the alt button. What's even more confusing is that in no way does this fit Mydei's character. It would at least make sense if Mydei was characterized as some kind of battle maniac, charging into fights headfirst without a hint of rationale, but it's been emphasized throughout the story that he is, on the contrary, calm and calculated. For instance, he spent nearly the entirety of the 3.1 story contemplating a single decision. Arguably, the autoplay doesn't often change the way he would have been played on manual anyways, but there are exceptions to this, especially in Apoc Shadow, and sometimes even Pure Fiction or MOC. The enhanced skill being on auto also leads to many overkill situations between waves. And I don't know about you, but I like being able to play the characters I actually pulled for. Even if this Berserker state somehow fits his character, that is in no way a reason to ruin gameplay over it. And now, at the risk of opening a can of worms, let's talk about Mydei's meta relevance. Keep in mind, I'm going to be approaching this from an E0, S0 level of investment, as that is both my personal experience and the most realistic one for free-to-plays and low spenders. To put things in perspective, let's take a look at the roster of version 3 and Amphoreus as a whole. Again, I'll let E0, S0, starting with V Herta. While not as noticeable of a powerhouse today, V Herta raised the DPS ceiling and had the endgame environment cater towards her months after her release, which made her an extremely valuable DPS from that alone. Aglaya is the character who broke expectations, topping clear charts even among casual, low-investment players. To this day, she remains a top-tier DPS. Tribi needs almost no explanation. She is one of the best, if not the best buffer in the game who defined the meta with her release. Castorice, despite filling the same niche as an HP drain DPS, is a strict upgrade to Mydei in every situation. I will elaborate more on her in a bit. Inoxa was supposedly a sub-DPS made to support the Herta, but even as a main DPS, he either matches or outperforms Mydei in all game modes. Hyacinth is the best in slot healer for HP units and a core member of the wheelchair team, along with Cypher, being Acheron's best partner outside of Pure Fiction, as well as being a top-tier generalist support. And Phynon, well, is Phynon. In comparison to the rest of these units, Mydei's introduction was underwhelming at best. There wasn't anything special that made him stand out, nor did he contribute anything to the meta. And to make matters worse, the placement of Mydei's banner was very unfortunate. He was sandwiched between Tribi in the same patch, arguably the most important out of all the V3 characters to pull for, and Castorice, the anniversary unit and a strict upgrade to him. Let's not forget that he was also the 7th imaginary man in the game. Like, what, Toyo? I'm not saying that every character should power creep or match the previous DPS, but the sheer difference in performance as well as the lack of fun in the gameplay itself feels insulting. Anyways, let's go back to Castorice because this is something that needs more attention. As mentioned, she was the anniversary unit who ran right after Mydei. Let's compare this to a previously anticipated unit, Firefly, a break DPS, who ran right after Boothill, another break DPS. Like Mydei and Castorice, Boothill and Firefly shared the same archetype. However, Boothill and Firefly were on par with each other, with one outperforming the other depending on the environment. On the other hand, Castorice outperforms Mydei in pretty much every situation imaginable. Why? The fact that he is so signature-reliant doesn't help either. It's also quite unfortunate how little support Mydei received after his release. Back to the break DPS example, Lingsha and Fugue were added to support the break archetype as a whole, universally buffing every break DPS. Sure, some would benefit a bit more than others, but in general they all gave a sizable boost to any break DPS. When it came to HP train, however, it didn't work quite the same way. Hyacinth was introduced to both HP scaling characters, and while she is still technically Mydei's best in slot with her buffs and personal damage, she ended up greatly benefiting Castorice and later the other HP scaling DPSs much more than him. Hyacinth had superb AoE healing but weak single target healing, meaning that Mydei could not generate charge as fast as he could with a different healer, resulting in a much more marginal upgrade from someone like Gallagher or Luocha than Castorice did. Unlike Fugue and Lingsha, it feels like Hyacinth was designed with just Castorice in mind, with Mydei brushed to the side. They could have made Hyacinth's single target heal stronger, perhaps with a primary target mechanic like they did with Hoho, and kept her overall healing the same, which would have kept her strength of Castorice while also benefiting Mydei more. Overall, Mydei is not only an underwhelming character from a meta standpoint, but also a disappointing unit from a gameplay perspective. He was personally my favorite of the Amphoreus cast, so it's quite disappointing to see him in this state. Even worse, many of us had to skip Tribi to get him since they were on the same patch. And using him at an E0 S0 level with Renmei, Jiao Qiu, or Pela feels awful. Please Hoyo, don't make another Mydei. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time.